Good morning. Today is, I'm going to be waving at bugs. Today is the 18th of May. We are in the local vigilance area in Connecticut today. No particular reason. I just didn't get to Vermont. Things didn't align that way. Today we're going to do a mix of a little bit of gossip, a little bit of technical, some follow-up down here, and whatever else pops up. Given the time of year and my experience in this area too, I'm going to, aside from getting bitten up by, these aren't black flies, they're like biting gnats of some kind. We're going to have to be a little bit more bear aware too, because bears are out and active now. And this area has more than a few of them. So that's something to be aware of too. Let's get moving. Let's see what we find, if only to give the bugs a more moving target, because they are biting and it's going to be annoying. So there may be some cursing too, for which I apologize. Anyway, let's get moving and see what we find. Thanks. Back. We are approaching a familiar beaver pond. And let's tackle the technical parts first. So I have a bit of aggravation with the DJI company right now, because in the course of their planned obsolescence, which if you are an IT person, you know the term. If not, basically they plan on the thing that you bought last week in about 6 years becoming obsolete. You're going to have to buy the newest, latest, and greatest, because they're assholes that way. And I have a DJI Spark and a DJI Mini, and the Mini had been working on my existing phone, but in the last update that they just did, the fucking thing started doing the same thing that the Spark had been doing. So it is now incompatible with a Galaxy S10. Leaving me with the conundrum of buying the latest and greatest remote ID capable DJI drone, which is well over $1,000, and I'm not spending that much money on a drone, because I'm not going to spend that much money on a drone. And the option of getting a newer phone, and when I have a perfectly good phone that works for everything else, I'm not going to do that, because fuck DJI. Worst case scenario, if I did get a different drone, I am going to get a Potensic Atom, I think it's an Atom S3, which is a $300 drone that has all the capability. And what I should have done in the first place was get a drone, non-DJI, which is less expensive, that has probably 99% of all the capabilities the other one has. Just in principle of not shitting out that much money for their bottom line, because they're like, I threw back my Osmo camera, which is a gimbal camera, because you can't use the thing without registering with their app, and you shouldn't have a simple camera be freaking dependent upon a phone app. That's bullshit. I remember ranting about that 2 years ago. I had the fucking phone, I had the camera for about a week, and when I realized there's no way to use it without that, I called BS and I sent the goddamn thing back. Because every other camera I've had, and I've had more than a few, none of them do that. Just DJI. So I have made some troubleshooting steps with the Spark, and it possibly works. So I'm going to be doing a controlled test with that today to see if it works. The app comes back up and tries to detect the drone, and therefore it gets that far. Now, whether or not the thing is stable or not, because you're on an unsupported phone now, that's a matter of opinion. The other option for the Mini is to either downgrade the app back to an older version and hope that it's going to work without constantly trying to force updates on you, because, yay. I also have never thrown out my Galaxy S9, which is now on Wi-Fi only and out in the middle of nowhere. It can't force updates on you. It's a fucked up workaround, but it might work, and I'm not buying a new drone because they want me to. They can kiss my ass. Wasn't sure, it's just an ant carrying something, so a little bit of nature there as he's looking at me looking at him. Anyway, so there's that. Let's move on. So, gossip. There's always gossip. This is just Facebook-related cultural observations of the community. You have... I've done a thing in the last 3 weeks where I started doing kind of a social experiment. If you read my bio on Facebook, it says backpacker, explorer, Bigfoot researcher and researcher of the Bigfoot community. So in some capacity, what that means is that I will Jane Goodall, if you will, as a verb, the study of the researchers in the community, and there are various cultural observations to be made. And if you don't like being studied, too fucking bad, because I do that. So, on the one major cultural divide with the community, you have the woo and the non-woo, and as a person who administers in the Facebook ecosphere more than one non-woo related group, and I do make it pretty clear, I think, that we operate on a flesh and blood. This is a corporeal, provable creature with scientific method, if in fact it is out there, methodology, and in the course of woo parlance, that makes me an aper. Meaning the thing is some form of primate-based hominid who, I'm not going to go into definition deeper than that, because despite the fact I do think I've seen one more than once, I haven't gotten a close enough look up there to basically gauge what it is or isn't beyond that point. Is it corporeal? What I saw was yes, and it looked hominid-ish with primate characteristics. Have I heard it talk? No. Have I heard it mind speak? No. Sorry. Have I seen it go through a portal? No. So, like it or not, barring evidence to the contrary, that's all bullshit. So, every now and then, you'll have somebody from the woo side of the aisle come in and try to spread the word. Spread the faith, so to speak. And I'm finding that is literally how these people operate. And their logic is in their ass. And it has been for a long time, but so from that perspective, they come in, they try to spread the faith, and they hit a brick wall, because most of the people in my group know where I stand on the matter and are like-minded. And I have a bug biting my forehead. Damn you for doing that, you little... There you are, you little son of a gun. That's what's left of him. So when I get home, I'm going to be a pile of bug bites because I forgot to bring bug spray. So that's on me. Anyway, those look to be moose pellets. Sprays from that. Okay. Never seen a moose in here. Clearly there is one in the neighborhood, though. So I've been kind of doing the opposite. And it's been a fun ride where you go into the groups that are literally called. What's amazing to me is, obviously Facebook has no prohibition on duplicate group names, because there are a lot of groups named Bigfoot or Bigfoot believers. So I say that in the spreading of the understanding. Notice how much greener it is since the last time we were here. Just showing you the seasonal change in the bugs. So I'm making the point of doing that to make the point that when I refer to a group of that name, I'm not referring to one single. Not sure what that is. Could be bear plop. I'm referring to the collectiveness of the group and the mindset, not one group, because there's more than one group with that name. But it's been an interesting ride to come into these groups and politely, keyword politely, because they all have rules. You're not allowed to be rude, blah. Okay, well, great. The thing is, it doesn't matter. You have people in these groups. Well, let's attack it with the broad brush of the broad stroke of the brush, and that is, you can't go 3 days without somebody in the group coming out and saying, "What's with all the naysayers in the group and all the trolls?" And like, no. I've seen the discourse, and all I see is somebody with a differing opinion who has more of a mindset along the lines of my own. And they all say the same thing. Either A, It's a matter of equal airtime and free speech, because I don't ban people in my groups on site to come in with the opposite mindset and start trying to spread the faith. I usually just let them kind of figure things out on their own and realize this is not a group catering to your mindset. And usually they'll figure that out and leave on their own. They probably go back to a group like this and bitch and moan. There's your moose sign. Big boy, too. Usually they do, sometimes with some grumpiness, and they probably go back to their own group like this and harp about us, but it is what it is. And then you have situations like this where the opposite happens, and some of the people in here are damn funny because they don't... I mean, I don't attack them like with name. They immediately go to name calling. You're a troll, you're this, you're that, you're a naysayer. No. I just don't look at the subject as if it's a religion. And these people do. And, well, all you have is an opinion. You're right. Exactly, I do. Last night it was a guy who is a staunch worshiper of Steve Isdall. He's the real... No, he's not the real deal. He reads other people's stories. He's a storyteller. He goes on camera and literally reads the Bigfoot stories of people that send them in. There's no verification, there's no vetting, there's nothing like that. He literally is just... He's a storyteller. Is that evidence? It adds to the folklore, granted, and that's how he's making his money on the internet. It's free enterprise, granted. Is it evidence? No. Evidence is the equivalent of like the bear plop and the moose shit and the moose track I just showed you. That's a physical thing that's actually there. That's what evidence is. Some dude saying, I saw this thing, that's a story. I mean... 2018, I had a series of interactions that I can make claim to. Do I have actual proof? No, I don't. Those are stories. I'd love to have the evidence, but the fact of the matter is evidence of these very, very intelligent creatures is unfortunately fleeting because they're that smart and they don't seem to want to give it up. So it's a rare thing when you actually have an opportunity to get some. You kind of have to be on your game and ready to, and it may seem like I'm just talking into a camera, but should something pop up, the camera's running. And it's running for as long as I'm out here. Also, I have one running in a secondary capacity when I'm out here just looking for sign. Right now I am making content for the sake of doing a editorial style presentation too, so... There was a guy last night, you're ignoring all the facts and the evidence. Steve Isdall is not facts, is not evidence. It's claims, it's stories. Stories are not evidence, and I'm sorry if you disagree, but I don't think I'm wrong. And as long as your evidence standard is so low, you're in the way. You're part of the problem. You are the white noise. And when you actually have somebody come along that does have actual evidence, you're the thing that's going to fucking drown it out because that challenges what you believe in. And he got very pissy with me last night because I didn't get rude, I don't think, past the point. I'm like, no, you're not presenting evidence. You are defending your hero, your idol. This is an exercise in idol worship. People have done it in the past with Isdall. They have done it with Todd Standing, who... You would think by now people would see him for what it is. I haven't seen anyone do it with Chris Noel yet, who is the person who gets the most of my criticism, but probably because he's relatively local. Ironically, I think he's on my friends list too. That's funny. And in fairness to him, I'll give him this due. I will give Chris Noel this due. I rag on him a lot. he's never come in with all the guns blazing, and he basically just kind of takes it on the chin, or basically just makes note, okay, that's your opinion, duly noted. So he is capable of apparently taking the higher road, which is in and of itself it's commendable. I don't buy his line of evidence or narration in the story, but he doesn't seem to care, so fine. Fair enough. It's not about name calling and all that, and I don't tend to do that with these people, but I do point out the flaws. And I've been doing this for 3 weeks, and so far as I can tell, so long as I am diplomatic about doing it, much to the ire of the naysayer whiners, as I shall now call them, I have not been threatened with any moderated administrative punishment, so to speak, which is interesting. The admins for, I mean, so you have Bigfoot believers, you have Bigfoot itself, which doesn't come out and say it's a believer group, but those of that mindset. Basically, to be a believer, apparently you have to literally believe, quote unquote, anything, so long as it promotes the subject. And no, you don't. And then you have, interestingly enough, the resistance are people like me. So I actually have active belief that I've seen one on 3 different occasions. I've had experiences that I am potentially willing to attribute to them more times than that. Do I have the proof? No, and I freely admit that. But because I do believe I've seen one, I have, excuse me, a baseline to apply other people's, in finger quotes, evidence against, and a lot of it doesn't measure up. It's bullshit. And whether they like it or not, I don't have to believe everything they're pushing. You got a stick break right there. Again, you're in an area where 3 seasons out of the year, you have a healthy amount of extreme winds, and Bigfoot did not do that. That's the other hot button one, is stick structures. People desperately want to believe that's Bigfoot related, and yet there's not a single bit of evidence of a physical nature that has ever indicated that it is. Like it or not, no. And I don't intend to change, but it's an interesting ride to go through here, because I mean, I've kind of measured it out. It's not every time, but the average seems to be 3 days. This again is me doing the Jane Goodall analogy of these fascinating little woo-pushing chimps in the community, and I'll apologize because I'm just doing that for effect. That's potentially interesting. Let's take a look at this. Because here you have an uproot, and it is the base of a bunch of roots on a tree that's fallen down, and you got a rock solidly in here. And you're going to have people come in and say, well, there's no way that could have gotten there naturally. You're missing the obvious. The rock could have been in between the roots as a tree grew, and then something knocked the tree over, the rock came up with it. Interesting find, but proof of nothing. And would guarantee you people are going to want to believe that. Trying to think of some other stuff. There was some lady who was defending Todd Standing, and Todd Standing, you either see him for what he is or you don't at this point. And I offered her she's like, show me the evidence that he's a hoaxer. I offered her a Google link to Todd Standing hoaxing on Google. I mean, basically, there has been so much fucking evidence presented over so much of a period of time. I shouldn't have to point out the obvious to you. Go and look yourself. And if she did go and look, and she now knows, she won't admit she's wrong because people just don't tend to do that. I had a person on Quora do the same thing on a completely unrelated topic with Patty Mayo, who is a guy who plays a bounty hunter. I think he's played a cop on YouTube as well. Some lady was defending him as like the most baddest-ass freaking cop and bounty hunter out there. Number one, you can't be a cop and a bounty hunter at the same time because it's a conflict of interest in practically every state in the union. And just in case you know, bounty hunting itself is illegal in every country in the world except for the United States and the Philippines. Which is why Dog the Bounty Hunter got arrested in Mexico for trying to be a bounty hunter and try to bring somebody back because Mexico does not allow bounty hunting. What he tried to do, you're basically a professional kidnapper in Mexico by their laws. Because he was a TV star, they let him go, and they probably should have let him rot in a Mexican prison because the guy's a murdering piece of shit anyway. Moving on. Ow. Bug biting me right in front of me. I want to go back by the pond. They didn't seem as prevalent down there, the bugs. Anyway, so Patty Mayo is an actor, and I actually saw one of his videos about bounty hunting. And if you know anything about bounty hunting laws, there are some very particular rules of engagement. They have a lot of power to apprehend the specific individual, just to make the case and take you through this, to give you the facts. The one individual who basically failed to appear for his bond hearing and basically forfeited his bond, he now belongs legally to the person who he bailed out with, the bondsman. And his retrieval agents, the quote-unquote bounty hunters, can come and get you if you're that person. And they have a lot of authority, but when it comes to entering homes and things like that, looking for that person, they have to have line of sight confirmation the person is actually in the home. You can't just go to his last known residence. You can't just go to his next door neighbor's house because they were known to be friends. You can't go to his mother's house and force your way in and remove people that are in your way, because then you run into things like kidnapping and false imprisonment and unlawful restraint. And bounty hunters have actually gone to prison for a long time doing this shit. And Patty Mayo comes into this video and he forces his way into a house looking for a fugitive. He tases and then handcuffs her two sons to the outside porch. So that's already felony kidnapping, assault and battery with a weapon, and basically home invasion. And he does the same thing to another person in the house and then eventually finds her hiding in the back. However, that ain't line of sight freaking confirmation. He had a hunch. And he beats the shit out of her in the course of doing it. And then there's a whole lot of excessive force and all this other stuff. But like, had this actually happened with a real bounty hunter, the fact of the matter is this guy just committed multiple felonies on camera in police gear, effectively impersonating a law enforcement officer when in fact you're not. He's an actor. And when somebody on Quora, again, idol worship is the operative mechanism here. He basically was defended vigorously by this woman until I pulled up a freaking simple Google search. Is Patty Mayo for real? And then you come up with like 30 fucking entries saying, no, the guy's just an actor and blah, blah, blah. And she went silent. She went on silent running. No response. Big surprise. And she, I'm going to go off actually this way. See if we can find any evidence while we're talking. And she went quiet. No acknowledgement she's wrong, even though she was. And the people that are in the Bigfoot believer group, so they even come out, it's a believer group. We believe everything. Well, why? Somebody could actually see tracks there. Thing is, if I step there, notice how it doesn't really hold the print that well. Ground's too wet. So, but I also love the people like, you're an armchair researcher. Again, just to be an asshole. There's my Barco lounger. There's my beer fridge. There's the TV where I watch and harp about freaking Patty Mayo videos on YouTube and the like. Okay. The pesky sound of the bugs that are in the kitchen. No, those are birds in the woods, but whatever. You get the idea. So, yeah. these people have no defense for their arguments, and I find that funny. But what's funnier is, and this is going to probably like get worse over time, I don't respond to them with the same level of veracity that they come at me with. I basically just, no, what you're doing is engaging in hero worship, or you are presenting stories as facts, and that's not what it is. And yes, this is my big, fat, hairy opinion that just doesn't jive with yours, and it seems to really, really bug you. But at the end of the day, your whole harp is, you're a closed-minded naysayer. Who's the one, however, failing to consider the alternative point of view? I'm offering you the flaw in your own thinking, and then I'm like, so can you at least try to see that? No. Okay, well, you'll be back in half an hour to argue some more, because apparently that's what you're doing. You're kind of like the Karens of Bigfooting. So I'm going to take a break. I'm going to kind of do a sweep through this wet area here, see if there's any dents or anything that are interesting artifacts, real evidence, and then we'll take things from there. If only because at the moment the bugs, knock on wood, have kind of gotten to a level of tolerable. They've taken a break for a bit. So we're going to do that. We'll be back in a bit, and we'll see you then. And we're, although it's a lovely day out, temperature-wise, I'm not finding hard artifacts in the ground or anything, but given the nature of the ground, it's not ideal per se, unless you have muddy areas, which again are not. Oddly enough, again, knock on wood, the gnats have I don't think they're gnats. I actually think they are black flies, but they've taken a powder for a bit. So I'm not going to complain. Maybe it's because I'm closer to the water again. They seem to be less prevalent there. They usually tend to like rapid running water in this phase of the year, but kind of like the way that stagnant water is breeding ground for mosquitoes and the like. So that's my philosophical differences with the people of these groups, and I find it interesting, though, that the admins are tolerant of opposing views so long as you're polite, and I have been. It's been easier sometimes than others. So moving on to the technical things. I have had an interesting experience with the Heltec automation company, which have been sending me the transceivers and things for LoRaWAN radio, which you hear me talking about, which is a text-based communication system that's loosely related to ham radio technology. So you're sending communication data, IoT-related data, so think like trail cams that have a transponder on there that I got to figure out some way to program to interact with a motion sensor from the camera. You can actually make a camera that's the equivalent of a trail camera out of a Raspberry Pi, which is also, I have two Pi Zeros that I could do that with, because they have a video cable connector for that, and I have a couple of spare video cables. I just need to get the camera module, and they do sell both heat sensor and infrared ones for night vision. So if you could contact that, my theory is this: I have two of those, and these would be my little test subjects. I would basically connect that to the transceiver, and then the transceiver sends out a pre-programmed message when it gets a hit on the motion sensor, so that when you have your there's an application called ChirpStack that I put on my CyberDeck, which is basically a homemade laptop that gets a hit there. You get a real-time hit when you're doing like a night operation, when you have cameras out, or you can do the same thing technically with audio recorders. You get an audio hit. And I just noticed the beaver lodge over there has got some fresh work on it. That one does too, so I guess you got two different sets of beavers, or maybe it's an extended family. I've never actually seen the beavers, though. Interestingly enough, we have them in my suburban neighborhood back in central Connecticut, and there's signs of beavers, but I've never seen them, but apparently they're there. Beavers all over the damn place. So I'm working towards having a small network of cameras like that for a night operation basis. I need to do that and then find a best case scenario battery powering kind of a thing. Solar works to a certain extent, but notice you have sun here, you're in the shade, you're in the shade. It'll still get sun by way of a solar panel, and there are actually a number of smaller camping related, fairly cheap USB capable solar panels that are on the market if you look for them. So that is a feasible thing, but that is going to charge the battery, not necessarily the transceiver and the camera. So there's some connector related things I need to fine tune before this becomes a feasible project. That's one thing I'm going to do. What I'm going to do today, I was able to do some troubleshooting on the Sparks application on my current phone, and I potentially have at least temporarily fixed that. So I'm going to do a controlled test on the way out. I'm not going to do it near water just to avoid mishaps, because the last time I splashed my other Spark, it never flew right again, and I'd rather not do that, if only for the investment on the drone in the first place. It's a little tank of a thing. It is fairly good in decent levels of wind. I just don't want to see the thing die needlessly, so we're going to do this under controlled circumstances, because just because the application initializes doesn't necessarily mean that it's trustworthy on an unsupported phone now. And yet you can still have uncontrollable. I've had flyaways before where the thing just suddenly isn't responding to your controller and flies off in a random direction unless you like somehow. I was able to do something where I was able to stop it, but you actually have to force input into it to do it. There are tricks to it, but you have to know these things. And you learn them as you're panicking, as you're watching a drone fly away from you. You kind of learn the hard way. So those are two things, and I built a third CyberDeck out of a very tiny ammo box and a small 5-inch monitor. And probably the smallest little Bluetooth capable keyboard I've seen. I'm going to tinker with that for a use case too, but I have a larger one that is considered my field research one, because that one's actually tied into a solar panel. So I can actually charge that one while out. Like if I'm out in the woods for a week, I can actually charge that by way of the sun. And I'd like to field test that too. And as we get warmer and more consistent sunshine and not the freaking rainy Seattle shit we've had all April into May, I'm going to test the endurance on that, give that an endurance test. I might want to get a secondary panel for the smaller one too, because I think the one I got for the bigger CyberDeck was basically like $16. They're not that expensive either. I mean, as far as that, it's like a USB-C capable solar panel, so having one of those isn't the most horrible thing either. You just have to have steady sunshine rather. So that's the technical side of things, and I'm going to start heading that way into the ferny things, probably get bug bit a little bit and try to find if there's any signs up this way. I came from that direction through all that stuff over there. It's probably over there about a quarter mile, and I'm going to head this way. We're heading in this direction. It looks like I'm heading north. I'm actually heading east. The orientation is east, west, south, north. How do I know that? I've just lived in Connecticut a long time, and I can generally tell the directions I'm going in. But I am not wrong. Within a certain degree of variance of northeast, and like northeast and that. I mean, but it's basically east. If you went to the coast, you're going that way, that's to the east. And if you went west towards New York, you're going behind me, and that puts south that way. To go home, going that way. To go towards Massachusetts, you're going that way. Just to give a little orientation related lecture. So at this point, unless something happens, we are about where we are in terms of making content. We're going to do some field work, and I don't want to be distracted by talking into the camera. So at this point, we're going to do the whole thing where we say like, subscribe, offer up commentary, suggestions, and we'll take things from there. If you're one of the angry people from one of the believer Facebook groups and you're going to yell at me, fine. I'm not going to respond to you, but fine. If it makes you feel better, I'll send you a cookie sometime. and the implied condescending pat on the head. But beyond that, unless I happen to run into one wanting to shake hands on the way out, I guess we're about where we are. And we'll catch you next time. So let me know what you think. We'll have this one up probably in a few weeks because I don't tend to do this with any great discipline. I upload a couple at a time and we'll go from there. But as always, thanks for watching and we'll catch you next time. Bye.